All right. Looks like we're live. The hopefully the voice is coming through. First time, excuse me, first time doing this live on YouTube from just a kind of a talking thing. I did a few live deals last year with while I was on the trainer with Zwift, but I was using an external app for that. So might have to go back to that. Just anyway, if my mic's not coming through, throw a hand up, let me know, leave it in the comments, and we'll sort through this. So this is something I've been thinking about doing for quite a while, and it's just one of those things you think about it, and you're just like, I just need to do it. So we get a lot of different comments or questions, that type of thing in the shop, and they're probably questions that a lot of people have or thoughts or whatnot, and thought I would start sharing some of those. So I made some notes yesterday, and it's a little off the cuff, but I don't know, maybe not. It's stuff that I think about all the time, but I thought I would start off with some of the comments that we've had on YouTube over the last, I don't know, week or so, and discuss those, because some of them can kind of deep dive into some topics. So excuse me. Anyway, so one of the comments that came up, and this dives into a whole like bike fitting thing and kind of geometry on these new gravel bikes that are out there. But somebody left a comment on I think it was our custom Jamis Renegade build, or maybe the review on it. And it was, I'll read it out. Hi, I went to buy an S3. So the S3, that's not a Cervelo S3. That would be a steel framed Jamis Renegade. So there's an S2 and then there's an S3. And I'm 5'9.5", inseam under 29 inches, and the tech that helped him, pick out a bike, put him on a 51. Does that make sense? Bike felt fine, but it was his, kind of first one. So usually had ridden mountain bikes. Definitely a 51 is out of the on the book by the paper fit for a bike like that. But a lot of these gravel bikes or touring bikes and a lot of stuff we've been seeing, and they're longer in the top tube and they have a higher stack height. So for instance, I've typically, used to ride 56 road bikes, but we just built a 9er ORE and in a 53, and I've got it set up to fit me like a glove. It's fantastic. They're longer, and I think the top tube on that ORE is actually 53 ORE, might even be longer than what the old RLT 56 was. So, and then it has a generous enough stack height that you can make it work out. It just depends on how you want the bike to fit. So what we've found is we've been downsizing a lot on some of the newer gravel bikes because of the generous stack height. So generally speaking, when we raise the handlebars for someone, we need to kind of bring them up but back at the same time. So we're all built differently. I have a super long inseam, almost no torso. And so if I'm on an aggressive fitting bike, I lose a bunch of my reach on the bike. So I'll downsize on a bike that has a generous enough stack height. It's kind of a balance too, because when you go down, then the stack height lowers in the front of the frame. So yeah, this person might be on the right bike. And we had a couple more other back and forth comments in it. And when they stood over the bike, the top tube was right there, uncomfortable. So yeah, they probably wouldn't have wanted to be on any higher of one. So if you look at the stem length and then also the seat posts that are coming on a lot of the newer bikes, and this is going for like a Santa Cruz Stigmata. We just started bringing Santa Cruz in, but if you look at a stock 9er ORE, or you look at a stock Renegade and Bianchi Arcadex, all the kind of the adventure side of the gravel bikes, you'll find that they run a much shorter stem length on them than what we're used to with a traditional road bike. And then they're all moving to a zero offset seat post. And so if you end up on one of those bikes that's on the long side, for instance, we've been putting people 6 foot into a lot more 56s lately on the adventure side bikes, because if the bike is on the long side and it already has a 60 millimeter stem on it and a zero offset seat post, you're kind of in a bind if you need to make it shorter. Now you're starting where you got to run mountain bike stems on a gravel bike. And so when the bike goes out the door, we want to make sure you can fit it one direction or the other, and you're not locked in on one side of it. So anyway, any other questions about bike fit, that type of thing, how that all works out? We could really deep dive the conversation, because I also think a lot of times, and I've had this in our own shop, where someone's coming in to buy a bike and they're like, well, here's my bike fit. You got to make it fit like this. And it's on a road bike, a racy road bike. And now they're buying a kind of an adventurous gravel bike. Well, you're probably not going to make those two bikes fit you the exact same. You're going to ride them and use them much differently. Very similar situation to an XC race bike versus a trail bike. I'm going to set those up to fit me differently, because I'm going to use those bikes differently, and my weight transfer on those two bikes is going to be different in how I want to ride those bikes. But anyway, so that's one of the topics or comments that came up recently. So here's one. Somebody asked, this is about when it was on one of the boys's the day across Minnesota race recaps that we did. Somebody asked, can they get away with 40s or 42 millimeter tires on it? The answer is, of course. It just totally depends on the year. So I think this year a lot of feedback was 45s were the right tire. I didn't do it this year, but both my kids did. And Kyle rode 40s, same 40s he rode most of around here, Strada Biancas, and he said he wished he rode 45s for it. And Reed was behind him through the night, or they were riding together, and Reed said Kyle was definitely bouncing around a lot, and it was just kind of soft and chunky. So I attempted the 480 a few years ago, and the second half of the course, as you work toward Wisconsin that year, you could have rode road tires down, and then the first half was fairly tame. 40s were pretty good for most of it, outside of a couple sandy spots. But other than that, it just totally depends on the year. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong on this in the comments, but if I'm not mistaken, I think that race was won a handful of years ago on a road bike with 32 millimeter GP 5000. So tell me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm almost certain it was. It just depends on the year. So I was told last year that it was pretty fast and packed. So anyway, you know how the gravel is. It depends on the year, depends on the weather, how dry it is, how much rain we get, that type of thing. So sure, yeah. Some other stuff that we get is hopefully this is interesting, fun stuff for everybody. Is somebody commented, and these are the fun ones. These are somebody watched our video, a short that I made for our last custom spearfish build. And this will tie into some other tubeless conversation as well. But so they caught that there was a tube. It was not a tubeless valve quickly in the video. And I remember doing the video of it, and I was like, wonder if somebody's going to catch that, because I left the stem lock ring off of it and the valve. And I'm like, somebody out on the internet, keyboard warrior, is going to want to call us out on that sweet bike not being set up tubeless. So, but anyway, the fact of the matter is, this is November, and when I got in my car this morning, it was -4 degrees. So that spearfish is out the door. That customer picked that up already, but they weren't going to ride it. They were getting that built up now. They're going to probably take a couple of rides on it, but winter was coming. So that bike, we put tubes in it so that it can sit through the winter with the tubes in it. They'll pop the tubes out or stop by the shop. We'll pop the tubes out and put the valves in and put some sealants in it in the spring before they actually ride it. It would be an absolute waste of your sealant to set it up right now, because we're actually taking our tires off of our own bikes right now and dumping all the sealant out so it doesn't dry up in it all winter. So if, depending on how much you ride, I mean, a lot of our tires, we burn through them in a season, but our boys, some of their more important races were the end of the year. So we actually put new tires on at the end of the year. And so we'll try to clean out as much as we can, dump that stuff out. So, and that leads to another one where somebody kind of was wondering, if we recommended tubeless to everybody. Of course not. And they thought that was a little bit strange that we wouldn't put everyone on tubeless tires, but that's one rider's perspective on how they ride their bike. But no, absolutely not. I mean, if someone's new to it and they're not that interested in it, and I mean, my biggest questions are, do you get flats where you currently ride? And if they say no, then I'm going to ask, are you concerned about some of the performance gains you can get out of riding a tubeless tire? For instance, running a little less tire pressure, whether that be on gravel road, mountain. And if they're like, no, I don't really care, I ride once a week or every other week, and I just kind of want to get out there, and I don't really want to have any maintenance extra stuff with it. So yeah, there's extra maintenance with tubeless. So we sell somebody a bike, we want to make sure they kind of know that ahead of time, because we've had a lot of people come into the shop, and they've maybe had a bike for 2 years or something, and wherever they bought it, nobody kind of gave them the rundown, or they probably did, but you're excited to get your new bike, and so you kind of stop listening to it. But they'll be like, it's not holding air anymore. And it's because they have never put sealant in it in 2 years and that type of thing, and it's dried out. And then they don't realize that there's some maintenance with topping it off for it to actually work good. That liquid sealant is actually what plugs the hole. So anyway, we could deep dive on a tubeless discussion. For gravel, it's if you ride a lot of gravel and you've bought a nice gravel bike, most people are going to run their gravel bikes tubeless. But we still have some customers that don't. And, they're not aggressive riders. They're mostly riding pavement, and their bike is set up with some gravel tires, and they have the freedom to go down some back roads and that kind of thing if they want to. The other one on mountain is, we still have a lot of people that ride tubes. I would say most people riding a pretty nice mountain bike are riding tubeless, but not all of them. We've some people that have been on old bikes for years, and they've kind of retired and finally got, decided to get a nice full suspension bike, and they don't ride it all the time, a ton, but they just got a nice bike, so when they're traveling, they can do it, and they just kind of want to mess with it. They're not trying to ride the bike really hard, really fast. They don't care about dropping the tire pressure. And are they missing out on some things? Of course. But it's kind of what people's goals are, that type of thing. So with it, but we do have a lot more newer riders, I would say, on, I'd say the entry point of a quality bike that are starting to ride them tubeless. So, and that's in those bikes in the $1,400, $1,500 range. More and more of those riders are setting up their bikes tubeless. A lot of those bikes are coming with tubeless tires now too, so it's not that big of a deal to set it up and try it. And every once in a while, we'll have someone that goes back, and it's because they probably didn't have flats in the past, and then spring came and the sealant was dried out, and they went to pop the tire off and just didn't really want to deal with it, and didn't want the extra labor to pay a shop to take care of it. So they went back to tubes, which is no big deal. So anyway, I'm looking at, I put some notes here on my phone, some topics to kind of cover, some Q&A. So another question comes up. I don't know. Some of you watch we play them in the shop up on the TV over there. The mountain bike videos that we do, where we got the kind of the GoPro chesty, and then you've got all the data on the top of the screen with the power and speed and heart rate and all that type of thing. We get asked all the time how we do that. There's a software out there called Telemetry Overlay, and it's pretty awesome. It takes a little bit of work to do it, but take the GoPro video and feed that into the software, and then you take your GPS file, so you're basically the .fit file from a Garmin or any GPS device. We like Garmin's, and then you have to sync them. So you can see the map from the GPS file, and then you can see the video, and then it's a good idea to make sure when you started the video or ended the video, you went by some type of landmark, or where the trail's entrance, so that you can find it on the map that comes up. And then once you get them synced, and then you kind of run it through some corners, and you can make sure it's synced up, and then you spit it out into basically makes a new video with all the data from the Garmin overlaid, and you can kind of manipulate it, make it look how you want, and that type of thing. But it's pretty cool. It makes it more entertaining. There's sometimes people will like stand here in the shop and just kind of staring at the TV. So, but anyway, probably, I don't know. Let's see how much time we got to open the shop here soon. But I thought this first one would be kind of quick. The idea is I'd like to get some questions coming. So if you have questions that you just want to sort through live, pop them into the chat. And ideally, I'd like to do a little back and forth. If you have comments on some of the stuff we're talking about, leave it in there, and we can answer them live here as well. So I think we got a delivery at the door, I think Lynn's getting. So anyway, I got a couple minutes here for another one. So let's see. This is a quick one. There's another one though about gearing on an Aspero 5. Somebody didn't understand. I'll leave that for another one. That could be a longer topic. Campy Ekar. Somebody asked on one of our Time ADHX 45 builds. They're setting up a new Campy Ekar bike, and I think it was going to be on a Surly. But anyway, it sounds like kind of a cool build. But anyway, they want to know the tips for setting it up. It was going to be actually their first time kind of doing a build, and they were concerned they chose hard mode for their first build. But anyway, so setting up the Campy, just a few things. I know any of them that we've ever gotten from the factory as stock builds, they all need the brake split on them. I know Campy, basically the way you connect that is actually at the caliper and not up at the hood. So if you get air in the line at the caliper, it's got to work its way all the way up the line into the reservoir before you can kind of pump it out at the reservoir at the hood. And some of it could work its way back into the caliper. So when you cut the lines and set those up, and I'm sure when the factory does it, they get air in the lines. So when they'll come into the shop, they have to be bled. And Campy says that you can cut the line, and you can, but there's going to be some air bubble that gets in the end there. There's no getting around it. So you have to do a full bleed on it versus just trying to pump the air out of the reservoir, like you could do on a SRAM brake or a Shimano brake. The other one is like a full run housing. This is kind of the least amount of housing is probably the better for it, just because it's so fine tuned with the 13 speeds with mechanical. But we've set them up with a full length housing internally, actually, through say like a Time ADHX frame, and then we've also had them, like I said, these run like through the headset. And on a Bianchi Architects, we've had those where they run right through the stem as well. And so those are pretty tight bends, and it still works out good. So you just got to make sure the runs are clean and use quality cable. So if you're not going to use the Campy slick cable, they're really nice cable housing, then I would recommend using at minimum the Jaguar Pro super slick stainless one, and then they have the Elite one as well that's supposed to be even more polished. So I wouldn't use just a standard cable housing on it, but that's the other one. And then just keep the bends kind of tight. Almost every Campy Ekar bike I've seen from the factory too, there's probably like 1.5 foot of housing coming out of the back of the frame around to the derailleur. It's pretty excessive. So when we've had those, we clean that up, we cut that down, and then so there's outside of that, it's it's not bad. I dig the brakes. The brakes are super powerful. they do collect a little bit more grime, it seems like. I don't know why, but if you've ridden them in wet weather, whatever, they're noisy. It stacks up in there. So I think it's just a good idea to keep it cleaned out, pop the pads out occasionally, and make sure any of the grime or sand, whatever builds up, is cleaned up out of the caliper behind the pads, kind of where it sits around the piston. So, but and then depending on what handlebar you're putting them on, is we'll usually, there's kind of some handlebars, it's a smooth transition, more smoother than others. Other ones, depending on what handlebar and the way the curve is on the hoods, should have had a bar here. It can get into the back side of the palm of your hand. It's not a super long hood. I've had people say, oh, people aren't riding them right, but they're wrong. It's not as long of a hood as a SRAM hood is. It's where, like, the new SRAM hoods, your whole hand is on the hood. On the Campy, you kind of can catch the back end of it, and there's not much cushion there, and it creates kind of a bump. So we'll usually take just a small little strips. We'll just hand cut them ourselves to fit, like, right behind where the hood goes into the handlebar, and layer them up there. And then when we wrap our tape around it, then there's this nice smooth transition. I remember one of the last ones we did, I was telling somebody about that, and when they picked up their new build, they were like, I don't feel anything that you were concerned about. And I'm like, it's because we kind of custom wrapped some bar tape in there to smoothen that out. So, but anyway, I am going to shut this down. We're going to open the shop in a few minutes. And unless anybody has like a quick question that they want to type in, otherwise, we're going to shut it down. I appreciate those that joined in, and let me know if you have any specific topics you want to cover. I would like to make this a regular thing, figuring out what time works for me personally to do it, and that type of thing. So I feel like Thursdays at 10:30 probably work. And if we get enough traction on it, because these will go out, you can watch them later. So if they get some views, then we'll maybe do some Monday too, and talk about all kinds of stuff. We can cut about general shop updates, what's going on in the shop, what's going on in the bike industry, all that type of stuff. I just thought easiest way for me to kick it off was to just go ahead and talk about some comments and topics and stuff that have literally real world life came up in the shop and mentioned to us on YouTube themselves. So anyway, give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, if you want more, and we'll try to keep them going. Thanks a lot. Later.